If you've known me for a while, you know that I have a growth mindset. The idea and the thought that everything that I do can be improved to get better over time. And it's interesting to me that Soku specifically chose to call their new pad the Kaizen because that is exactly what the thought is behind Kaizen: continuous improvement. Little changes over a big span of time makes an incredible end result. Just making small changes and constantly getting better with time. And if you followed Soku for a while, you know that their original release was the Shiro and the Akai. And the question is, with the Kaizen having their name as continuous improvement, have they improved with this pad? Let's get into it. All right, so first I wanted to kind of go over a couple things, but I wanted to bring out the Akai just to talk about the differences between these two pads. So the original was 480 by 400 and 4 millimeters thick. The Kaizen is 490 by 420 and it's 3.5 millimeters thick. So both of these pads were created for control, and whenever you use the original Akai pad, one, you'll notice that the stitching on the sides is significantly thicker. It's definitely not as tight as the new Kaizen Pro, and at least in terms of the surface of this pad, depending on the skates, so I mean, if I use something like core pads on the Akai, it feels soft, it feels smooth, no issues. If I use something like the Ghost Glides, it feels a little more muddy on the Akai. Whenever you move over to the Kaizen, I don't have any issues with that in any of the skates that I try. No issues. Dots, fine. Stock skates, fine. Ghost Glides, fine. Core pads, also fine. There's no pad or no skate on this pad that's going to make it feel muddy. So this is a more smooth control pad just in terms of the overall glide. This pad is not as skate dependent as the original Akai was. And at least whenever we're talking about the Kaizen Pro, there's a couple of key differences. Number one, with the original base on the Akai, it was just a regular anti-slip rubber base. This is using their own in-house polyurethane base. Two, I mean, it's still going to be a control pad, and like I mentioned, if you look at the stitching compared to the original, this is significantly smaller and it's significantly tighter compared to the original. And ultimately, whenever we talk about a pad, the surface feeling reminds me like a lesser version of the Tenta X Octo Grip, just because of the texture of the pad. So the texture of the pad, whenever I mean, even moving my hand from the top, moving all the way down, I feel like I should have like a bunch of fuzz on my hand, but I don't. That's just the way that the surface of the pad feels, and at least on the Octo Grip, that was much more prevalent and definitely a heavier feeling of like I'm gonna have a whole cat on my hand. This is like, again, like a lower version of the Octo Grip if you tried it. This is still a very good surface, but it does make you feel like you're leaving something on your hands, at least whenever I'm playing, like using something like the LA1. Whenever I'm moving anything left to right, I feel like I get a little bit on my hands, but again, there's nothing there. It's just that feeling of the texture of the surface that they're using. Outside of the surface, in terms of overall gameplay, the Kaizen is a very solid control pad. And like I said, I mean, compared to the original Akai, depending on the skates that you used, it could feel a little more muddy. You don't get this on this pad. This is definitely an upgraded version in every sense of the word, and everything that you could think about on a pad when you talk about the stitching, when you talk about the base, when you talk about the surface, when you talk about the overall glide, everything on this pad is better. I'm interested to see kind of what direction they're going to go next. Obviously, this is a control pad. Personally, for me, if you go back to my original review on the Akai and the Shiro, those were my original like pads that I started reviewing, and I think I've definitely had different opinions over the last year. And at least in using the Akai now, especially the Shiro. So, as I mentioned in my original review, the Akai was my favorite over the Shiro. For whatever reason, in using the Shiro, I just don't perform well. The overall glide and the movement that I get whenever I'm target switching, I just don't perform well. I either overshoot, undershoot. I don't feel locked into that pad at all. I just feel very off whenever I use the Shiro. The Akai was the complete opposite. I used the Akai for a good while, because that was a very solid pad for me to use. The Akai was not it for me. And if they did this as a control pad, I'm interested to see if the next one is either going to be a hybrid or if it's going to be a speed pad, because either way, I am down. I am interested to see what they do. I mean, if they have their own polyurethane base, if they're releasing a pad like this with this level of quality in a speed pad or in a hybrid pad, I think I'm definitely going to enjoy whatever they do next. Again, because I'm not really a fan of the Shiro, but I was a big fan of the Akai. And moving from the Akai to this is a much better pad in every sense of the word. And I mean, like I said, at least in terms of the overall surface, the feeling, the glide, yes, at least personally for me, I feel like the surface and the texture of the pad leaves me feeling like I have something on my hands, and I'm not a huge fan of that feeling. But again, does it affect my gameplay? No. Whenever I use, I mean, have I used this pad for more than a week? Yeah. Would I use this pad again? Yeah. Is this going to affect me to be like, oh my God, I hate it? You know, I just don't like the way the surface feels? No. I mean, it's just, if anything, that is incredibly a personal preference. There's no reason for anyone to not buy this pad just because I feel like I have a little bit of texture and feeling like I'm getting something on my hands or on my palm. That's not a reason to not buy this pad. If you're looking for a solid quality pad with good stitching, with a good surface, with a good base, this is a very solid pad. Let's go through the pad one more time. Number one, when we talk about the stitching is much tighter and much smaller compared to the original Akai. Compared to the original, you're definitely going to feel the stitching if you're moving your hand or if you have your forearm on the pad. You're not going to feel that on the Kaizen. Number two, the base is not using a regular base. They're using their own custom in-house base for the Kaizen. It is better. Number three, compared to the original Akai, the Akai was definitely a smoother pad or a smoother surface, but the Kaizen has a little bit more texture within the surface of the pad to give you more control as you're target switching and your overall glide. It gives you more control in the way that the surface is created. It is better. When they use the word Kaizen with the focus on continual improvement, compared to the original, this is a very significant improvement. The stitching is better, the base is better, the surface is better. Every part of this pad is better than the originals. And if they can use this pad for something like a hybrid or something like a speed pad, I'm really interested in trying it, because again, I was not a huge fan of the Shiro whenever it initially came out. I just don't play well on that pad. I still have it. I just don't perform well. I don't feel locked in on that pad at all. But this is a very solid pad. It performs well. It's a very good quality pad. And I mean, yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to say. They have made continuous improvements into this pad and have made it a lot better than the originals. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comment section down below. And with that, be sure to have the mindset of Kaizen. Peace.